So answering 4 essay questions is now a mandatory requirement when applying to any and all federal government jobs. This was announced months ago, but we're seeing it in job announcements on usajobs.gov. You can read through there, it clearly states it out. So you're going to have to answer these questions before submitting your application. How should you answer them? The first thing you have to remember is AI is forbidden. You cannot use artificial intelligence when answering these questions. In fact, you have to click a button that says, yes, this answer is in my own words. I did not use AI and I did not use a consultant. Now, does this mean that people are not going to use AI? Between you and me, you know how people are. They're going to do what they do. They're going to use AI. But you need to be aware there are tools to detect AI in answers. Now, is it 100% accurate? Probably not. But I wouldn't take the risk because you could find yourself ineligible. Do something like that. Another thing is these answers are limited to 200 words. I don't think you're going to hit that cap, but that's the limit. And your answers are going to be unique to you. They're not going to be able to apply to the person next to you. So if your buddy is applying for a federal government job, do not use that person's answers as your own. You're going to have to develop your own. And if you anticipate applying to more than one federal job, I would save your answers. And here's the deal. It takes people dozens of applications, and in some situations, it can take hundreds of applications. So it's very rare. I think I've met maybe a handful of people that were able to apply once and actually get a job offer. Outside of that, you're going to have to apply in bulk to positions that you're actually eligible and qualified for. So I would save your answers because between agency to agency, I haven't noticed a big difference in how they word these questions. So copy them, have them in a document somewhere on your desktop so you can easily copy and paste your own answers into future questionnaires. Okay, so the first question asks, how has your commitment to the Constitution and the founding principles of the U.S. inspired you to pursue this role within the government? Provide a concrete example from professional, academic, or personal experience. This question is essentially asking, when did you have your aha moment? When did the light bulb go on top of your head? When did you realize you had a calling to public service? This could have been in an academic setting. Maybe you're in college and you're doing a book report on the American Revolution. Something in there inspired you, and that's why you want to serve the American public. Or if you were in the military, you had a difficult mission that made you appreciate the rule of law. Or your parents are immigrants. Your grandparents are immigrants. They took the oath to the Constitution. And that whole process inspired you because you learned more about the system. Any one of those, but it needs to be personal. The more personal, the better. You can also use this opportunity to weave in the reason on why you want to work for the specific agency that you're applying to. So I tell people to usually wait until the interview stage, but if you have enough room here, you could try to squeeze it in. Essentially, if you're applying for, let's say, the Veterans Affairs, why? Why is it personal to you to work in the Veterans Affairs? Why do you have a passion to work there? Does the mission or vision align with your personal beliefs? What happened throughout your childhood or throughout your life that made you want to work for that agency? If it's the VA, maybe you have veterans in your family. Maybe you're a veteran and you deeply care about veterans receiving the benefits that they earned. Or let's say it's HUD, Department of Housing. Maybe as a child, the only home that your parents could afford was going through a HUD loan, FHA loan, right? And if that's the case, maybe it left an impact on you as a child and you can talk about that. It could be Small Business Administration, could be Department of Agriculture, whatever agency you're applying to, look for an opportunity through their mission, through their vision, find out what speaks to you. Where is the story? Try to have a story that connects you. Way too many people pass this opportunity up. And a lot of times, this is like 50% of the way of getting the job offer. You know, all things being equal, you want somebody who's passionate about the agency and about the mission. So make sure you take that opportunity. Okay, the next question asks, in this role, how would you use your skills and experience to improve government efficiency and effectiveness? So this one wants to know all about when and how were you efficient and effective. So this information is on your resume, or it should be on your resume. You're asking yourself 4 questions. When did you save money, save time, improve a process, or improve an outcome? Whenever you did that, there's a story behind it, and you need to tell that story. Maybe it was a time where you created an Excel spreadsheet so that you can track different correspondence or different documents or reports. You did that, it improved the process. And you want to quantify it some kind of way. 20%, 25% increase year over year, quarter over quarter. You're looking for a story like that. You want to tell that. How are you going to use the same manner in which you did that in the past? How are you going to use it coming into the new agency? You want to talk about how can you improve efficiency within that position. Look at what the position does. If you don't know, go to the job announcement. The very first paragraph, it talks about duties. So that's what the position should be. That's what's required of the position. Now, it's not always accurate, but it's at least something to go off of. Okay, the next question is, how would you help advance the president's executive orders and policy priorities in this role? Identify 1 or 2 relevant executive orders or policy initiatives that are significant to you and explain how you would help implement them if hired. So this one's a little interesting because, as you know, some of the executive orders that have come out from the Trump administration have been challenged legally. Some of them are in legal limbo. We still don't know what's gonna happen with those. Like the in birthright citizenship. I mean, what's gonna happen with that? Who knows? Maybe don't mention that one. But the key word for me here is relevant. Which ones are relevant? You can't go wrong with mentioning the executive order about improving efficiency in the workplace. That's probably a good one to mention. Maybe you can mention the one about AI, artificial intelligence, how they're trying to ramp that up. So, and they can both be connected together because you're using AI, you're becoming more efficient. How are you going to help push those initiatives? You're going to do it by analyzing a process, identifying certain points that could potentially be improved if you leverage AI. So you could do that with anything, right? You're just assessing a process. You can talk about that. The next question asks, how has a strong work ethic contributed to your professional, academic, or personal achievements? Provide 1 or 2 specific examples and explain how those qualities would enable you to serve effectively in this position. So this question here is asking you to brag about yourself. Not in an arrogant way, but you have to showcase your achievements, your success. And this is where a lot of people have a hard time in the interview stage because they refuse to brag about themselves. They stay too humble. And in order to lock down the job offer, someone has to be compelled, the hiring manager has to be compelled to hire you because you're a high quality individual. How do they know that? By just reading your resume. If you're not telling them exactly what's on that resume in your own words in a story format, that's what you should do. Now here it's talking about work ethic. So take an achievement you have from the past. Could be a medal for leadership or a monetary award at your last organization. Take that achievement and look back. What did it take to get there? It was a series of events. Maybe you turned in reports, you volunteered for additional assignments, whatever it was. That's what demonstrates your work ethic. Tell that story. Input it down there because the story isn't going to tell itself. So a lot of people are wondering with these questions, like, is this going to be graded? Is this a pass, fail, go, no go? And the answer is no. It is not graded in any way, but you still have to fill it out. It's still part of your comprehensive job application package. So the hiring manager can still see it. Now, will the hiring manager care? They may or they may not, depending on their personality, depending on how they view things. Some of them will, but most of the ones I talk to, they're not going to care that much. But still, you need to make sure that you're filling it out. Now, in addition to this, we got some funny business happening with the remote workers. If you remember, several months back, there was a big push to return everybody into the office to include those that work 100% remote. And they needed to get within 50 miles of a federal building. So there was a huge effort for OPM, for the government to pay to relocate them. But it's a lot of money. It is some serious money. So that program is paused right now. If you want to know a little bit more about that, check this video out next. Stay updated by signing up to the free newsletter down below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.